I'm so glad to have you here, Abigail Visco Rusert. And I just, you gave a great lecture on awe. And I wanted to know, you mentioned something about spectacle. So what type of spectacles do our youth face, and what does that have to do with youth ministry?
Well, sort of going back to where this originated from, there's a guy named Guy Debord. He's a French Marxist theorist, also was a filmmaker, and he generated this basic idea that we are no longer living our lives in sort of intimate relationship in the same way that we used to be. But instead, our relationships, everything we do is filtered through images. And so we see evidence of this in things like The Bachelor, right? We're not actually falling in love. We're watching people fall in love.
So true.
Reality TV is a great example of this. And then another theologian I admire, Shannon Ross, he took this sort of to the next level and compared spectacle to ancient Rome. And I think this is where we get into what we're up against as youth ministers. So spectacle in ancient Rome, you're gathering people in colosseums and you're sort of giving them what I would call spiritual candy, right? They come to the Colosseum, they're getting this spiritual candy, they're getting met with sort of their longing for transcendence, their longing for awe and purpose and wonder, and it's all given to them in this Colosseum space that's more about commodity than anything else. They have to pay to get what they want. And so modern day examples of this would be things like the halftime show. You've got Katy Perry, right? Instead of battling a lion in the Colosseum, she comes out riding a lion and singing about how she's the champion and we're going to hear her roar, right? And she's writing this cultural liturgy that our young people are attending, reading, listening to, participating in. And I think for youth ministers, we have to think about this in our own context. What sort of liturgies are we writing? Are we living? Are we producing as youth ministers? The church is all about liturgy. Liturgy is what the church uses to pull our wants, pull our desires toward our longing toward God. That we would stand in awe of God, not in awe of Katy Perry, right? And we're really, really good at manufacturing experiences. It's almost like we've taken what these ancient spectacles have done in Rome, and we're like, okay, we can do this. We can manufacture an experience like this and draw young people toward God, toward joy, through the youth retreat, through a huge concert, through camp. We use all these things, and none of that is bad. That's all coming from a very sort of innate place, a God-ordained place. And yet we know that when we're mimicking all these other spectacles, it's us that's doing the work. It's sort of like faith or joy by design. And we need to flip that. We need to remember that the narrative, the story of which we're a part as Christians, is that God first came to us, that it's actually God's design, God's plan that we're working in, that we're living in. So we can design for joy all we want. We can design for awe and wonder and transcendence all we want. But at the end of the day, it's God who meets us and God who comes to us. So after God comes to us, we're compelled toward joy. We're not designers, right? We're compelled toward joy.